you mentioned that he was having a heart attack on the night. There's no doubt about that, is there?
No, there's no doubt about it. His symptoms were absolutely classic. His electrocardiogram, which was done on the around midnight or later on the 9th, early morning of the 10th, was absolutely classic for that of a very, very fresh acute myocardial infarction or heart attack. And when the arteriograms were done a few minutes later on the early morning of the 10th, they showed acute clot in the right coronary artery, which is very consistent with a fresh heart attack. So clearly, on the evening of the 9th or early morning of the 10th, he was experiencing a classic presentation for a heart attack.
Did he have cardiac enzymes drawn to check for released proteins in his blood to signal a heart attack?
There was one set of cardiac enzymes. Usually our patients, we get several sets, but he actually had only one set drawn. And it was drawn on the early morning of the 10th when he arrived at the first hospital in Wisconsin.
And that's page 246. And you've reviewed these values, haven't you, Dr. Rock?
I have.
All right. What do these values tell us, if anything, in terms of whether or not he was having acute coronary syndrome 4 or 5 days earlier?
They don't really tell us anything about 4 or 5 days earlier. This is a snapshot in time, so it tells us what's going on at that particular point in time.
His troponin's elevated, right?
That's correct.
And from what we've learned, that troponin rises fairly early after a heart attack and goes down slower than the other values.
That's correct.
So would it be proper to determine from these values, based upon the troponin level and based upon the CKMB not rising yet, if you're with me, can we determine from these values that he must have been having acute coronary syndrome 4 or 5 days earlier because the troponin is still elevated and the CKMB is not?
No, you cannot draw that conclusion. And in fact, I think we can be very sure by looking at these 3 cardiac markers that something very acute is going on, and that is because of the myoglobin. The myoglobin value is significantly elevated.
Is that the one in the middle?
That's the one in the middle, the MYO, myoglobin. It's 372, and the upper limit of normal is somewhere in the 200. So it's definitely above normal. The reason we can be sure that something acute is going on is because of those 3 cardiac markers. The myoglobin is the one which is generally released first from the heart muscle. All of these markers are components of the heart. They're proteins within the heart, and when heart muscle is injured and begins its destruction process, these various proteins or markers then seep out into the bloodstream. And generally the one that seeps out first is the one with the smallest molecular weight. The smallest molecule is the one that will be able to penetrate out first. And the myoglobin is the one with the smallest molecule, and it typically rises within 2 hours or so of a heart injury. It will peak in the bloodstream within 9 hours or so, and it will become normal within 24 hours. So the fact that it tells us that something is very acute is happening here.
Do you have an opinion, Dr. Rogers, as to what physiologically was going on inside his coronary arteries to bring this heart attack on?
Yes. What happened inside the coronary arteries was the rupture, more likely than not, was a rupture of an atherosclerotic plaque. We mentioned before that the coronary arteries are subject to the buildup of fatty substance inside the artery itself, and this fatty substance can partially or totally occlude the vessel, but more often than not, patients who have heart attacks start off with with an artery that is not completely narrowed. In fact, may only be about 40 to 50% narrowed with plaque. And these plaques tend to be, in many cases, particularly prone to rupture.